psychology and the psychiatry, there should be a lot of Buddhist psychologists. And Naropa is going in that direction, and California Institute of Integral Studies, there's a few institutions in the country giving people counseling and psychology degrees with a strong Buddhist side and use of meditation in psychology and psychotherapy. Things like what Kabat-Zinn did, your fellow disciple, Sung San-nim's fellow student, Kabat-Zinn, where he put it into the medical thing through the hospitals. As for, on the pragmatic basis without the religious side, because we have to see Buddhism as more than a religion, which it is. It has it's a religion, it's an educational system, it's a scientific system, and a cultural system in all the countries where it thrived. And it is engaging with the West on all of those levels, not just on the religious level. And that's very important, because in the modern time, the whole religion mutual converting stuff is very dangerous, which of course in South Korea you know that extremely well. How rabid it can get. And the whole idea, we're all going to convert you, so we shouldn't do that with the Buddhists, with the Christians and the Muslims and others. It will create terrible conflict.
But at the same time, in the United States, especially with that issue of marrying it to psychology or realizing the relationship that already exists between Buddhist science and psychological science, there is a stripping away of a lot of the spiritual context, a secularization, if you will, that made it such a complete science for the Buddha. They're sort of taking the technology of meditation
Well, that's
out.
what they're doing at this time.
Correct. And do you find that to be a very healthy thing, the kind of decontextualizing, a kind of stripping away, because we as Americans are so afraid of anything that smells of religion? I mean, we enlightened...
Pretend to be. Right. These people with their machines and their MRIs and trying to just figure out if there's a gimmick in Buddhist meditation that will make people healthier and happier is fine. They're trying to steal the golden bowl, and they're not taking the full thing. But let them steal it. That's the way it spreads. And then they will look at other things slowly. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think that's too bad. But what my whole shtick in the university has been, which I'm still unsuccessful with, is that the real block is not so much religion on one side is a block. When Buddhism as it becomes more prominent in America, there will be religious problems. But the biggest block is the arrogance of Westerners who think they're the smartest people that ever lived, and their science is the greatest science that ever existed, and that everybody, that pre-modern people, are all ignorant and superstitious and stupid. And that arrogance is their problem.
About the outer modernity.
It's like these yogis, they can see something on a tachyscoscope and at a 10,000th of a second that we can't see, and they can do this and they can do that. They can change their brain patterns and we can't. But they don't know what they're doing. They somehow just are doing that. So we're going to find out what they're doing because we're the smart people. We're the great intellectuals. That's the block. They don't realize that they have to learn the doctrines and the teachings, and they have to practice the discipline. Every science student, a physicist, should have to have 10,000 hours of Zen training to be able to control their observing mind, to be able to work with their machines properly, and to theorize and work with their math properly. If their mind is all uncontrolled, they're never going to figure out reality. No way. They have to develop their own selves as an instrument. And that's what Buddhist science has the disciplines to do. And so eventually they'll do that, That's my view. But the point is this: Buddhism is the three higher educations, right? The three adhishikshas, we call it. I don't know the Korean word. Buddhism in practice, what we call adhigama dharma, right? Not just the doctrines, the three baskets, but the three practices. And or the three adhishikshas, which means like a higher education. Shiksha is still the word for education in India. The Department of Education is the Department of Shiksha, not the Department of Training. So that's the ethics, right? Meditation and wisdom. Those three. And those three together have to be employed to gain enlightenment, right? So only the meditation part, and maybe some of the ethical part, is religious. The rest is practical. And the wisdom part is not really religious in what people understand, or even spiritual. It's just knowing reality of yourself. So it is science, actually. And so when Buddhism is coming in the West, not just as one other religion, not a different belief, it's coming as a different civilization to an uncivilized place. I mean, let's face it, I'm white and we're these white honky people. I'm maybe more horrible than you, having come from the South, my parents. But I don't know where you came from.
Jersey.
But, you know, New Jersey?
Yeah.
That's where I met my guru.
Yeah.
But the point is, from a Buddhist point of view, we're a border frontier country, you know.
Yeah.
Still very violent. The egos are untamed, you know, of even our presidents and people like that, you know.
Yeah.
And we're very dangerous militarily.
Yeah.
And Jesus is trying to tell us to be nice and don't bomb your enemy and turn the other cheek, but we're not listening.
Yeah.
So Buddhism is hitting us on all of those levels, and therefore Buddhists in Asia who want to have success in America have to be willing to function on all of those levels.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Not just more temples. And that we have temples and we can have plenty and that'd be good. And stupas are good. I love them. Don't get me wrong. But they have to be willing to work in the existing, through the existing institutions as well. You know?
Yeah. Well, here's another question. You know, this coming of the Dharma to the West, and especially the institutions, we talk about monasticism and teachers and forms.
Right.
The issue for a lot of my Dharma brothers and me, coming back here, my teacher's gone, so I'm not going to live there my whole life. I went there to practice with him.
Right.
And of course, I benefit from the monastic culture. I still do the 3-month retreats twice a year. But it's time to come back now and begin to do something here.
Good.
But we struggle with how much of the cultural baggage that is kind of encrusted around that. We went for the wisdom teachings. I didn't go for the clothing. I didn't go for the hairstyle. I went for the teachings, the practice, and the community which supported it. At the same time, when you come back and you meet your friends again, you notice how much of the cultural stuff you have not yet separated. And for you, from your viewpoint, how do we do that? How do we separate? Especially Korean Buddhism has so much Confucianism shot into it, and a lot of the rank,
rituals,
the structure, a lot of the age-oriented structure, a lot of the sort of the military mindset, the military culture.
Yes, possibly. I don't know enough about Korean Buddhism.
Well,
I do
Japan,
know that, for example, Buddha had certain things. For example, he made age in the Sangha the criterion of age, which was very revolutionary for him in the very patriarchal Indian society. That is to say, a younger person who'd been a bhikshu longer was considered senior to an older person who was a shorter-term bhikshu. So your age changed by when you were ordained.
Right.
So that was a little bit of a pressure against the simple veneration of age, period, you know, biological age. And Buddha has a lot of things embedded in the Vinaya. You know, little dynamite bombs like that. And actually, I don't know if you ever looked at it in the Pali Vinaya.
I haven't looked in the Pali.
In the first Sutta Vibhanga of that, the first incident in the Pali Vinaya is an incident where Buddha is visiting a village and an old Brahmin goes to see him, an elderly Brahmin and his other Brahmins say, don't go see Buddha, he's a jerk and he's irreverent and you don't like it. But he said, no, I want to see Buddha. I hear he's a great teacher. And then he came, and when he came, Buddha didn't stand up. Although he was an old Brahmin. Buddha didn't rise to greet him. Buddha just said, welcome, have a seat. But he didn't get up. So then he goes nuts about that, because Buddha didn't get up. And then he keeps saying, you have no manners. And Buddha said, yes, I don't have any manners, you're right. Because, and then he would give some Buddhist teaching why he was not being conventional. The guy realized that what he was being taught, and he realized he was in this different presence, you know. And then finally he calmed down. And then Buddha said, you know, if I had stood up, if a fully enlightened Buddha stood up just for some old guy, because he was old, that guy's head would split in 7 pieces, you know. Meaning he would be so freaked out by being in the presence and yet thinking he was in an ordinary place with an ordinary person that it would make his mind all chaotic, you know. So I think, put it this way, if you want to do that, what I think you need to do is you need to come back, and whatever you choose to be, whatever the karma of it is, set up a real Korean monastery where you really will accept people to train them, or to, as they say in Korea, or educate them, as I prefer to say. And then as you set that up, you will begin to see things that you have to adapt, dealing with an American core of a cadre of disciples and students. And lay people who are not close to the students. And one really wonderful thing, I believe the Korean thing, I mean, you are really celibate, right? Korean monks are real bhikshus. You have a bhikshu ordination according to Vinaya, right?
Yes.
So this would be really good for the Japanese Zen people, because one of their problems, in my opinion, is that they all act weird Zen monks, and they're dragging their children and their wives and babies, and they're not monks. And the monk thing is very critical to Buddhism. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh has real monks,
Yeah.
and the little bit of Tibetan things that are beginning are having